The year is 1996. In Japan, a little video game company called Game Freak is getting ready for the launch of their newest title. This company began life as a magazine for gaming fans, but transitioned into actually making video games after a few years, having some small success with games like Quinty and Jerry Boy. But they started to really get the financial backing they needed when they started working on projects with Nintendo, such as Yoshi and Mario and Wario. These projects and others would give the main creative force behind the company, Satoshi Tajiri, the money, notoriety, and connections he needed to pitch an idea that he had in the back of his mind for years. With the legendary Shigeru Miyamoto helping to move the needle in his favor, Pokémon was greenlit and officially entered development. When the game finally released on February 27, 1996, it took the world by storm. Pokémon Red and Green were an instant classic. They started a legendary series of games that is now the highest grossing media franchise of all time. All that with this little cartridge. This game is loved by millions, maybe even billions at this point. And to think, it all started here, with something that's really this terrible. All jokes aside, Pokemon realized they had a problem pretty early on. The original games weren't exactly technical marvels, nor were they even that good to look at. I know the Game Boy was never known for its graphical power, but look at this! As the series took off, it became clear that people wanted more from Pokemon than what the gray brick of fate could provide, and Game Freak definitely capitalized on this. The Pokemon card game first hit store shelves in Japan less than 1 year after the first games came out, giving trainers the first real glimpse into what their favorite Pokemon would look like in full color. The Pokemon anime first hit the air in April of 1997, just a bit over a year from the release of the first games, and now we got to see Pokemon in action. For the first time, you could actually see how they move and what attacks really look like. Yet, this wasn't really enough for Game Freak and fans. People wanted to see their Pokemon in action. Not just some random trainers on the TV. What does my Charizard look like in battle? I mean, I fought with him, I trained him, I conquered the league side by side with him. I want to play with my Charizard, rendered in the best graphics available. There was an additional factor to this that I'm not sure Game Freak totally expected to take off as much as it did. The competitive scene. Game Freak always knew people would want to battle each other, but I highly doubt they ever expected it to become such a huge spectator event, which caused them a bit of a problem because, as we've already established, the original Pokemon wasn't much to look at. It also isn't exactly easy to show battles on the big screen for all the populace to enjoy. In 1999, they would solve both problems simultaneously by introducing the world to the 3D Battle Simulator. For the first decade of Pokemon's life, every generation got at least one whole video game that's primary purpose was to give the Pokemon playing populace the ability to play with their trusted companions on what was, at the time, the best graphics available. With Pokemon Champions coming out this year, possibly as early as Pokemon Day, I decided that I wanted to work my way through every single 3D battle simulator and get a detailed look into some of the best spin-offs in Pokemon history. I'm covering each game one right after another, with the final episode of the series coming out right before Pokemon's 30th birthday and the potential release of Pokemon Champions. Hopefully, as long as I stick to my schedule. So join me as I tackle the first games in the 3D battle genre, Pokémon Stadium. Now I'm assuming because you're watching this video that is spoken entirely in English, that when you think of Pokémon Stadium, you're probably thinking about this game right here. Pokémon Stadium, released in Japan on April 30th, 1999, and the rest of the world about 1 year later. But before we talk about this one, we should probably talk about the original, because in Japan, this game is called Pokémon Stadium 2, as it is a sequel to the original game titled Pokémon Tsutajiamu. This game, as you may be able to guess, never made it outside of Japan. Now, I've always known it existed, but I've never actually played it before today, for two key reasons. First, I don't own it, and even if I did, Nintendo 64s are region locked, so I couldn't play it on my special Pikachu N64 even if I had it. Luckily, I can circumvent this problem with the help of
totally legitimate means.
The second problem is that this game is entirely in Japanese. Now, I'm doing the Duolingo right now, but my streak is not that high. I will admit though, and this isn't a joke, I am legitimately trying to learn Japanese right now, and I had some legitimate joy when I realized I could actually read a couple of words on my screen. For instance, I know right here that I'm being asked yes or no. I don't know what the question is, but I know what my options are. Luckily for me, this game is Pokémon, so I know what I'm doing, at least for the most part. All I need is a little bit of trial and error to figure out what move corresponds to what button. Unluckily for me, there's not a lot to this game. Or at least there would be a lot more, but due to my use of an
totally legitimate means,
I can't access most of it. A few features require you to have a Game Boy transfer pack with a corresponding copy of Pokémon Red or Green inside of it. These features include a system to organize your boxes of Pokémon and items, which, let me tell you, is a certifiable godsend in these old Pokémon games, a built-in player for the Game Boy game so you can play on the big screen, and a Pokédex that comes with a 3D model viewer for all of the original 151 Pokémon. What can we do? The answer is primarily battle. One of my all-time favorite gaming fun facts is actually about battles in this particular game. Now, I'm not one to be needlessly critical of Game Freak, but I have noticed that people seem to be really mad about their technical capabilities in recent years. So here's the fun fact, that's not a new development. The original Pokémon games were infested with bugs, and the programming was a mess. Now legendary game designer Shigeki Morimoto also failed to keep proper documentation for how he planned out the battle system. This was a problem when it came time to remake that battle system for this game. Luckily, another legendary game developer, Satoru Iwata, came in, analyzed the source code of the original games, and was able to recreate the entire battle system with bug fixes in about one single week. Good lord, do I miss that man. Back to the actual game now, this game has two modes available to us with only rental Pokémon. Free Battle and Tournament. Both are basically what they say on the tin. Free Battle lets you do quick one-on-one 6v6 battles with the computer with rule sets either limiting you to Pokemon between levels 1 through 30, 50 through 55, or a free-for-all. It's not much, but it is technically a game mode, so I did feel the need to mention it. The real main attraction is the Tournament. It has the same levels 1 through 30 or level 50 through 55 breakdowns as Free Battle, but this time it's an 8-round single elimination gauntlet. After each win, you get this nifty little badge, and they put it on your hat for some reason. I don't know what that's about. A really cool thing about this is that the trainers for the level 50 through 55 tournament are all real guys, as in they were based on the legitimate participants in the Nintendo Cup 1997, the first real Pokemon tournament. They're also really freaking hard, even on the lowest difficulty setting, so I'm going to assume it is an accurate portrayal of those competitive gamers. This also might be a symptom of one of the really neat things about this game, and spoiler alert, the other two Pokemon Stadium games, the rental system. I was probably in middle school by the time I realized these games even had the option of connecting a Game Boy game to them. I was here for the rentals. You can select from a series of already made up Pokemon for each of the game modes that you can borrow for the battles. In the case of Japanese Stadium, this is what I have to use. I know in the modern era with the internet and data miners and stuff, everyone has already seen every Pokemon in detail before games even come out, but I cannot express to you how not the case that was back in the day. As an adult, catching 151 unique Pokemon is quite literally child's play for me, but as a kid, it was a distant dream. For a kid in that era, having access to nearly every single Pokemon at your fingertips, even if their movesets are terrible, which is the punishment for using rental Pokemon, was like being given Elon Musk's credit card and diplomatic immunity. Options you had never even considered were now available. In a main series game, you had to find the Pokemon, train it up, maybe evolve it if you're lucky, almost entirely on your own, because guides and walkthroughs are notoriously unreliable in this day if you can even find any. Actually giving people the ability to play with every Pokemon was an incredible move, especially for a franchise that was still in its infancy like Pokemon was at the time. Well, not quite all the Pokemon. You see, we're still looking at the Japanese game right now, and you might notice from this rental section that we're missing a few Pokemon. In fact, we're missing almost all of them. Only 40 total Pokemon are playable in this game. Even if you had a Game Boy game plugged in, unless you're using one of these 40 Pokemon, you're out of luck. I will give them some credit though. This list is pretty solid for the first 151. If you force me to pick only 40 Pokemon to model and animate, I probably couldn't do too much better. There are a few oddities to me though, like Pikachu being here but not Raichu, and Pokemon I feel like people would strongly associate with Gen 1, like Rhydon or Butterfree, being absolutely nowhere. The rest of the models are available in the Pokédex, but as I already mentioned, you needed a Game Boy game for that. Now, our good friends over at Game Freak really knew that this game, as established, just wasn't enough. Bare minimum, people needed the ability to play with all of their Pokemon, not Game Freak's pre-selected pool. That's why, about 9 months later, they put out Pokémon Stadium 2, or as we here in the rest of the world call it, Pokémon Stadium. Here's what I find so incredible about this game in particular. All it really had to be was the first game with all the Pokemon added. Just give people the ability to play with every Pokemon they have in full 3D animation, and they'll love it. That's it. That's all they needed to do. That was the only thing that this game needed to do to have sold well. Yet, they did so much more than that. For starters, just like the last one, this game also features the Game Boy Tower, which lets you fully play your copies of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow on the big screen. There's even an unlockable speed up button, which is incredibly useful in these old slow as molasses early games. For some of the other things in this game, I would need far better Pokemon than the ones the rental system provided. So I played all the way through Pokemon Red again just for this video, and the speed up was beyond helpful. There's also Oak's Lab, which lets you organize your boxes like the last game because Gen 1 boxes were horrible to use, and trade Pokemon, which technically speaking means you don't need 2 Game Boys to complete the Gen 1 Pokédex. Just 2 games, Pokemon Stadium, and 2 transfer packs, which I have all of those things. Once again, the main attraction is the battles. Now, I haven't actually talked much about how the battles look. And now I know that this is an N64 game, so it is highly dated, graphically speaking, but for the time period, this is pretty great. All the Pokemon look exactly how they need to. And while some Pokemon can move around kinda weird like, they are all very expressive and they give so much personality to each Pokemon. In case you're wondering, you're not looking at shiny Pokemon either. Those didn't exist yet as of when this game came out, but this game has a feature where if you bring a Pokemon with a nickname to battle, it will apply a complicated formula that can actually end up shifting the colors around, giving your own Pokemon a touch more variety. And I know I keep bringing up the time period these games came out in, but when it comes to the models as a whole, it really is important when talking about these games, because this was really one of the only ways to see how some of these Pokemon really looked like in action. The Gen 1 sprites triggered the imagination, but these models and animations make Pokemon really come alive. And of course, there can be no talk about Pokemon Stadium that would be complete without a mention of how absolutely committed to the job the announcer was. Here are just some of my favorite voice lines.
How will our intrepid challenger fare against the best of the best? Here's the first move. Whoa! Looks like a bad Pokémon choice. Whoa! Perfect game! Down! That didn't take much! Taken down on the word go! Wow! Taken down with one hit!
Now that I've gushed about all the core features of the game, let's talk about what there actually is to do in Pokémon Stadium. Just like with the Japanese game, you have the option of battling other players or battling the AI, but this time around, your battle options are massively expanded. The first to mention is the Gym Leader Castle. You're presented with a veritable snake way of towers, each one containing a gym leader to battle. But first, you have to beat their 3 apprentices in a single elimination gauntlet. As you might imagine, the first few battles can be defeated pretty easily, but as you go on, you'll see why I felt the need to train up my own team for this game. Hey Giovanni, if you're so obsessed with rare Pokemon, you might want to check in with your gym trainers. They've got all 3 legendary birds, bro. Every gym leader also has their own battle arena, which is a touch I've always enjoyed. It's entirely just background flavor, but it really helps with a sense of progression, because after all, this really is just a prolonged sequence of battle after battle. Absolutely, the hardest fight for me was the Elite Four, which you unlock after beating all 8 gym leaders. Holy crap, this might be one of the hardest battles for me in my entire history of playing Pokemon. I don't know if I just made a crappy team or what, but I lost so much in this particular gauntlet. I was furious at how much I lost. For context on just how difficult this was for me, I record my attempts against each gym leader in separate video files for ease of editing. The total video file for Brock, the easiest gym leader, was about 14 minutes long. Giovanni, ostensibly the hardest gym leader, was about 23 minutes long. My longest regular gym leader fight was Misty, largely because I had to redo this one due to some bad paralysis RNG from her Starmie, but that ultimately only took me 35 minutes. The Elite Four was an hour and a half. 3 times larger than my previous most difficult fight, and I didn't even record all of it. That's just the point I decided I had enough footage and stopped recording. I have no idea how long it actually took me. The biggest offenders here for me were Lorelei and Lance's Lapras. My only real options for Lapras was Thunderbolt on my Starmie or Low Kick on my Machamp. But the way these AI battles work in this game is that you are shown each other's full team of 6, and then you can bring 3 Pokemon with you to the fight. Because of that, I didn't want to bring Machamp in with Lorelei or Lance because I could see that they both had Pokemon that could hard counter it, like Slowbro or Gyarados. Naturally, I thought I could rely on my Starmie, but both Lapras know Confuse Ray, meaning I might just not get to attack. And Lance's Lapras in particular has Thunderbolt, which is obviously a problem for Starmie. I have never in my life been more angry at an endangered species. Ultimately, I was able to defeat Lance, and the battle against Gary went pretty well, with each of the 3 Pokemon I brought easily countering the Pokemon he brought. Charizard beat Executor but fell to Clefable's Thunderbolt. Golem Earthquake Clefable into the ground, but got picked off by Ninetales, and Starmie could finish off the Ninetales with no real issue. As a reward for being the champion, you actually do get a prize. You will randomly be given one of 8 different Pokemon, either a starter Pokemon, Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan, Eevee, or one of the 2 fossils, all of which can be transferred to a Game Boy game. This is kind of a cool give because while it is completely random, each of these Pokemon is one that you would normally have to trade for, which makes completing your Pokédex just a little bit easier. The Gym Leader Castle Challenge isn't the only battle you can take on though. There are also the Stadium Cups. They are a series of tournaments that all have their own rule sets. The first and most basic is the Poké Cup, which has a level 50 to 55 level cap. And when you pick your team, your total level can't be above 155. So you can have 1 level 55 Pokemon and 2 level 50s, or however else you want to do that math. Now, I didn't know that at the time, so I had just trained my entire party to level 55. Guess I'm gonna have to go back into Pokemon Red and configure a new, slightly lower level team. Great. This mode also had difficulty levels ranging from Pokeball to Master Ball, but honestly, I don't feel like I had too much of a problem with it. Especially because completing a battle with all of your Pokemon still alive gives you a continue that you can use to replay a battle if you lose. With a solid understanding of how Gen 1 battles work, you can put together a team capable of answering most threats pretty easily. The second game mode is the Petite Cup. For those familiar with the modern Little Cup, this has pretty similar rules. No evolved Pokemon or legendaries, and you can't have any Pokemon that are over 6'7" or 44 pounds. Because Gen 1 didn't have breeding, the level limit here is actually 25 to 30 instead of 5, which is what it would become when this type of game mode was turned into the Little Cup. And I really liked this mode. It was fun tracking down Pokemon that met the criteria. Plenty of these little guys are fun and can be absolutely devastating. I had absolutely no idea Diglett went quite this hard. There's also the Pika Cup, which doesn't have the same evolution requirements, but does require you to have Pokemon that are even weaker than the Petite Cup, at levels 15 through 20. As you can imagine, the fully evolved Pokemon you can get at this level are absolutely broken. I was able to absolutely destroy most battles with a combination of Gyarados and Mr. Mime. Gen 1 is the absolute peak of Psychic-type Pokemon's dominance, so literally anything I could use that was Psychic-type was worth the effort. Finally, you have the Prime Cup. It is a no-holds-barred, no Pokemon disallowed slugfest. Maxed out levels, maxed out stats, hold on for dear life. At the highest difficulty level, Master Ball, the AI is even throwing out heavy hitters like the legendary birds and Mew. While I don't consider this harder than the Elite Four in the Gym Leader Castle, this is ostensibly the hardest challenge in the game. Or it would be. You see, that no Pokemon disallowed rule actually means you can pretty easily abuse this tournament. Both Gym Leader Castle and the Poke Cup had a rule that 2 particular Pokemon were not allowed, even if you brought them from your own game. But the Prime Cup can be enjoyed by all challengers, assuming you have them in a copy of Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow, meaning you can roll up with Mew and Mewtwo, or as I like to call them, the win button. Upon beating both Poke Cup and Prime Cup, you get access to the Doduo Game Boy Tower upgrade, which gives you the ability to speed up the Game Boy games. Trust me, that's an incredible upgrade. These old school games can make a Slowpoke feel bored. Now, once you've beaten all the Stadium Cups and the Gym Leader Castle, what do you win? First, as a reward, you get a Dodrio Game Boy Tower upgrade to speed up the game even more. But honestly, I don't like this one. It is nauseatingly too fast for anything that isn't moving back and forth in a straight line. Next, you will find that there is one final challenge available. The sky will turn dark and a silhouette will appear in the sky. The ultimate Pokemon has come to battle. That's right, it's a face-off with Mewtwo himself. He's honestly kinda tough, even though he is a one-on-one, and you can mirror match him with your own Mewtwo and bring a full team of 6. If I hadn't brought 2 Pokemon who can pretty easily tank his hits well, my own Mewtwo and Mew, I honestly don't know if I would have survived. He has incredibly powerful Psychics, Blizzard and Thunderbolt providing really powerful coverage, and even Rest to restore HP and remove status effects. However, upon beating him, the credits will roll and the game will finally be over. They even changed the title screen to show your superiority. However, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I've gotten my fill quite yet. I want to keep playing. I mean, there has to be something else we can do, right? Luckily, there's round 2. The entire game somehow gets even more difficult, with more challenging battles, stronger movesets on enemies, the works. Now, I guess I gotta knuckle down and play through all of those, right? screw it, minigame time. Remember when I said that I was impressed because all this game really had to be was a battle simulator with all the Pokemon, but they added in a bunch of single-player game modes? Well, I neglected to mention one that can be done either solo or with friends that I think really nails down that idea. The Kids Club. Did Game Freak really have to make 9 different minigames, each one showcasing Pokemon in amusing and fun ways that aren't battling? No, they didn't really have to do that. Is it really fun that they did? It certainly is really fun that they did. I don't know if someone just wandered over from the Mario Party team and didn't get the memo what we were doing here, but I am glad they did. Anyway, here's my impromptu lightning round ranking all 9 minigames. Number 9, Snore War. Drowsies gotta hypnotize each other in time with a slowly accelerating pendulum, and I swear to all that is holy, despite being a grown adult man, I can still not figure out the timing on this thing after about the halfway mark. Number 8, Thundering Dynamo. There's just not really much to this one. You gotta mash either A or B depending on the color of this main light, and the losers get shocked, which is, I will admit, kind of funny. 7, Ekans Hoop Hurl. This one would be really fun if it controlled better. You gotta fling the Ekans onto the Diglett, but seeing as there's no real way to aim and Ekans bounces like it's made of rubber, this game feels about as rigged as a real-life ring toss. Number 6, Dig Dig Dig. Moving on to games I'm actually really enjoying now, you gotta mash the shoulder buttons as Sandshrew to dig down, but you gotta do it in a nice left-right rhythm to make any real progress. My Sandshrew seems really excited about breaking a water main, but I'll allow it because he's so dang cute. Number 5, Rock Harden. Metapod and Kakuna need to harden to withstand hits from rocks, but hardening reduces your stamina. Last Mon standing is the winner. This one's really fun because you're essentially playing a game of chicken with these golden Metapods. 4, Clefairy Says. It's essentially Simon, but with a mean teacher Clefairy that abuses you with a rubber mallet for messing up the dance. The song is adorable, and the hammer is hilarious. Number 3, Magikarp Splash. I really wanted to put this one higher because it was my favorite minigame when I played this as a child. Probably because it was the only one I could beat with any regularity. But nostalgia can only get you so far. You splash with Magikarp in smoothly timed jumps to count up your meter, and the rest of the fish will flounder when they lose. Puns absolutely intended. Number 2, Run Rattata Run. Navigate a literal rat race with your Rattata. This one feels like it has some real skill to it, while also not being a button masher. And this weird treadmill contraption reminds me of Paper Mario for some reason. Number 1, Sushi Go Round. Lickitung has to eat as much sushi as Pokemonly possible, and also doesn't care if I go bankrupt in the process. Whoever eats the highest yen amount of sushi is the winner, and there's a multiplier for eating the same type of sushi in a row. I like this one because there's some real strategy to it. Do you just eat everything, or do you wait and go for the multiplier? Do you stay in one place and let the sushi come to you, or do you go and snipe sushi off someone else's plate? I also like this one because I am a white American from the Midwest, so I legitimately didn't know sushi existed when I was a really little kid, meaning I had no idea what we were eating. This was probably my first time ever hearing this particular sound effect too, so that's fun. I also really like that they kept the Japanese guy yelling things at you the whole time instead of dubbing the minigame into English. Apparently, he's just been saying different types of sushi all these years, and I certainly never noticed. With that, you really have seen all there is in Pokemon Stadium. Honestly, this was really fun, if occasionally frustrating for me. I don't normally go back and play Gen 1 games, but that was the only way I was ever going to be able to beat things like the Gym Leader Castle, which is something I never did as a kid. While the threat of Round 2 hangs over me like the sword of Damocles, it still does feel really good to dig into this game that was so formative to my early Pokemon experience. Without games like this one, fleshing out the Pokemon world and giving me the ability to see and play with more Pokemon than a little child like me could ever have caught and trained, I honestly don't know if I would still be as big a Pokemon fan as I am right now. With the game being almost entirely battles, it does feel fairly repetitive at times, but it's really cool that they were playing with different rule sets even in the early days of the franchise. And I hope you all enjoyed this run through Pokemon Stadium, and join me next week as I continue my trek through Pokemon's 3D battle sims in Pokemon Stadium 2. Thank you, like the video, share with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.